Hey Phil, how you doing?
Good. This is it, Scott. This is the last one.
We're past the penultimate into the ultimate.
And I made sure I went back and I checked our first clip and I made sure to
Oh,
wear the same shirt.
oh, really?
And I
That's a
chose,
good. I know.
I
I
was
was
having
thinking
trouble.
of trying to mark the occasion somehow, and I couldn't think of it. But
I was having trouble figuring out what shirt I was wearing because, I always wear shirts with logos. Well, this one, for some reason, doesn't have a logo. Um, anyway, so we're going to look at School of Rock tonight, which I wanted to save for the end because, as I mentioned, I did end up in the book. The clipography is just alphabetized, but not put in any special order. But then I said, okay, I'm going to rank them. I'll put it on Facebook, and I also posted that on the blog. And this is the song I chose as number one, and I not second guess that at all.
yeah,
You know, there were some other real contenders. There was definitely what was it last week we talked about heroes and perks of being a wallflower. I think Adventureland, the
mhm.
replacements. Oh, blanking out. What's the replacement song in Adventureland?
Unsatisfied. I think.
Satisfied and two or three others, but this was the right choice.
Yeah, no, great choice.
So I got a little lazy. I didn't rewatch the whole film, but also partly, in the last decade, I've probably watched it 5 or 6 times. I'm coming up to that point where I end up ruining the film by watching it once too often. So I thought,
Yeah, I'm in the same boat because I watched it a
yeah,
few times with my kids, and I've seen it at least a couple or a few times on my own. So I did
yeah,
rewatch most of it. The other
okay,
night. I rented it on YouTube. I had to sort of skip towards the end, so like much of the last third, and then I skipped to the very end to watch it because I liked the last scene. But
all the
the bit towards the end where they actually get into the competition, to me that's the most maybe the one sort of it feels a bit superfluous that part of the movie for me, but
you
the
mean
very
where they
end is
actually
great.
not the final show? You're talking about where they the mechanics of them getting accepted and all that.
Yeah, just some of the stuff when
Yeah,
the other like I mean it's okay that part, but really for
it's
me
not
in
no,
some way oh, I'm jumping ahead, but I like the scene
no.
where he's in the classroom with the parents. And then from that point forward, it's a bit like, okay, well, they got to do this to, finish off the story. But I
Yeah.
absolutely love the movie until then. So,
Okay. So just to set it up, I did make a number of notes. I wanted to see where this came about Richard Linklater's career. So, he really hit a stretch in the 90s where he became a big deal. He made his best films really in a small window. In the mid 90s, he started off as Slacker, which I've seen once and I'm not crazy about it, but it really kind of made his name. Have you ever seen Slacker?
no, I've never seen it.
So it's just this weird film. I don't know if that's where I don't think, I think he took a term that was already in circulation. Yeah, it would have been because this comes to
I think
like
so, yeah.
93, 94, Nirvana's already happened. And, he makes a film about kind of that lifestyle. It's got Teresa from the Butthole Surfers. She just died a year or two ago. She was prominently featured in the poster. But then he makes Dazed and Confused and Before Sunrise back to back. So he's really on top of things. I'm not, Before Sunrise, I liked it at the time. I'm sure you know about it. Maybe you've seen
Yeah,
part of this.
I've seen it, and I like it, but I don't know. It seems
It's well done, and I just never wanted to
a
go
little
back to it.
overrated or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't use
Then
the
I
term
think,
overrated usually, but I just don't think it's that.
well, it's just, I don't know. I never felt compelled to watch it a second time. And same with the second one. I don't even think I saw the third one. Then he hits a bit of a lull. He does four films in a row. Suburbia, which I was reading about. I've never seen it. I'm kind of interested in seeing it. It's got at least two or three people from Dazed and Confused, and it's about, aimless teenagers, I think. So it's almost like a follow-up to Dazed and Confused. I'm going to make an effort to see that. The Newton Boys, which I've never seen, and I didn't read up on it. I don't think I ever really wanted to see it. Waking Life, which does have a following. Um, and, it's that weird one he made that's sort of
Art
animation, but
animation. Yeah,
yeah, very realistic. And
yeah, I want to see that actually.
yeah, Keanu Reeves is in it, his voice and his the drawing based on him. And that does have a following, but I don't think it was a commercial success by any means. And then he made a really small film called Tape, which I've seen. I
Mm.
got it cheap one day and remember nothing about it. It's with Uma Thurman and maybe James Franco and a third person, just three people in the movie. So, after the kind of high point of Dazed and Confused and Before Sunrise, he had a bit of a commercial lull anyway. And I also wanted to see where Jack Black stood in his career. And I really didn't know him that well. I knew him from two films, Jesus' Son. He has a great scene in the hospital. He works a lot. We talked about that. He works alongside uh, the Today Show. What would the final show be without me blanking out things that I know as well
So
as
you're
my
not the
Billy
main
Crudup.
Billy
Billy Crudup.
Crudup. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so he has a great scene in the hospital where they use cowgirl in the sand. And then he was in High Fidelity. He was very
Yeah.
funny in High Fidelity. Had that great line about, I never thought I'd say this, but can I go back to work?
Yeah.
Uh, and then he had his first, I think it was his first film where he was the lead actor, Shallow Hal, a comedy of, actually he's co co-lead build with she's such a well-known actress, Gwyneth Paltrow. I've never seen it. I've seen bits and parts. So he hasn't really broken out either. Richard Linklater has, Jack Black hasn't. And School of Rock, 2003. That's the year it came out. I always mention this. I did not really warm to it the first time I saw it. I went back to For You. I did a top 10 that year for Rock Critics, where I ranked films and actually gave them a rating. So I gave it a 6.0, which is not great in my book. Just sort of, okay, it had some things I liked, or it was just middling. I had it number 10, but I really was kind of confused by the film. Here, I took a quote from it. Jack Black does pretty well, but the kids couldn't be blander. That's the thing that really threw me the first time, how bland the kids were, because it's got this classic setup, teachers in the class, and you've got the kids on one side, the teacher on the other side, but the traditional way to frame it is the teacher's really square and the kids are unruly, the blackboard jungle to serve a love situation. And this is just completely the opposite. He
Yeah.
shows up first day with a hangover and the kids are very straight laced. So that threw me. And then in brackets, I put, because there were two other films that year that also featured, one set in school and the other that featured kids, Spellbound, the great documentary on the spelling bee, and a French film called Être et Avoir, to be, about a documentary about a retiring teacher. And those kids were really interesting. So they made, right away, I noticed a contrast between those kids and the ones in School of Rock. And I said, if you took those kids and dropped them into School of Rock, you'd really have something. Dumb, stupid thing to say. I think they're supposed to be bland, though. So I did pick up on that. Richard Linklater is making some kind of generational comment, which he may or may not have been, but you have to have the kids that way. First of all, if the kids aren't that way, you can't have Jack Black in the film, because Jack Black can't play a straight line. You either don't have Jack Black, you go and hire like William Hurt or somebody to be the teacher, or you try to make Jack Black be the square one. He just can't do that. He's, what's partly so much of what's great about the film, it would have been completely wrong. So in my entire history of missing the point in films, that ranks near the top. I'm not sure when I started to come around. I think it may have been before this, but I definitely started to come around. I mentioned this in the thing I wrote for our blog. That was my year-end film, the last 3 or 4 years before I retired. I showed many different films to end the year. I showed Spellbound for a few years. I showed the basketball one, Heart of the Game. I showed even the one about ballroom dancing, American Graffiti, a teacher and I showed. We shouldn't have. It had language in it. Showed Napoleon Dynamite one year. I talked about that. So I went through a whole bunch of different films, and I finally settled on School of Rock, and I love showing that to the class. And there was nothing really, there are a couple of parts that I probably should have muted, but there was nothing I had to mute. So I wasn't on edge as it played.
Yeah.
So I was thinking about tonight, is the basic premise of the film far-fetched that, maybe you can't even go with that. You don't like the film. I don't think it is. The premise of the film is that Jack Black, Dewey Martin, not Dewey Martin. Dewey Martin was in Buffalo
Do we
Springfield. I forget his last name, but Dewey. He,
Finn,
what is it? Dewey
Finn?
Finn. You're right.
Yeah.
Yep. He gets fired from his band for being just a complete, hammy blowhard, and he lives with the guy that wrote the script, Mike Judge, I think.
Mike White, I
Mike
think.
White, yes, and that's why I got Jack Black and Jack White
Mm.
confused because
Yeah,
of
yeah.
Mike White. That's a lot to keep track of in a 63-year-old brain. Mike White, he lives with Mike White and Parker Posey, who's
No,
not
not
Parker,
Parker Posey. Sarah Silverman.
Sarah Silverman.
Were you doing a
And
joke there? Were you doing a joke?
what's that?
Were you
No,
joking when oh, okay.
no, I got her because I'm thinking of Dazed and Confused. That's why.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Sarah
Sarah
Silverman.
Silverman, who is really playing against type. She's like this straight arrow
She's funny, actually.
who's brought Mike White over to her side, trying like put all that stuff, he used to be in Dewey's band, put that in your past, go, earn a living, we'll get married, we'll have kids, et cetera, et cetera. And they've taken in, or Jack Black is living with them anyway, and she can't stand Jack Black. So he takes a call one day. Mike White, I forget, Ned Schneebly
Yeah.
is a substitute teacher, and Jack Black takes a call and changes his voice, pretends he's Ned, and takes the job. And I thought, is that so far-fetched you can go with it? Then I thought, probably in a private school, you might be able to get away with that at first, because actually, before I was on my current board permanently, I was what was called an emergency supply. And I thought, for the few days I got called in, I probably could have sent someone else those days because they didn't check my ID. I'm not signed on with the board. I'm just there to fill in an emergency.
Yeah.
Now, Jack Black takes a job for, weeks on end, the whole term or the rest of the year. So you couldn't get away with that. Yeah, you got to go with that.
Yeah.
So he takes the job just so he can collect a check. And the first, whatever, 2 or 3 weeks, he just literally sits in the front of the room. He says, do whatever you want. We'll go outside. We'll go out for recess at a certain point, but just do what you want. I'm hungover. And the kids, they want to learn. So that's where Richard Linklater just flips the traditional thing on its head. But then one day he discovers, I can't, you watched it more recently.
They're in music class.
Yes.
And he hears the music coming from upstairs or from
Yeah.
the second floor or whatever.
That's right. And he gets the idea, okay, maybe I can work with that. So the next day he starts asking him about that. And little by little, he basically assigns them all instruments. I think he feels them out for what they maybe know about a little bit about to start with. Assigns them all instruments, and then they kind of start to practice on the sly. And he tells them that it's for some, he's got something in mind. I don't think he lets them know about the competition right away. Does he? Maybe, I don't know.
Not right away, no.
Not right away. He wants to get them into this battle of the bands. And again, you have to stretch credulity because he's going to have to take them off premise, et cetera, et cetera. But he gets them to sign on with him. They're excited. They like it. To go to the Bonzo sequence, it happens, I think, approximately 20 to 30 minutes into the film. And like I say, the kids, they're excited about this band idea. The scene is preceded, and the scene's on YouTube. I think maybe it even has become the official video for Bonzo Goes to Bitburg. It starts, they're in the school cafeteria, and he's joking around with these holding court with the teachers. He tells that age-old joke about those who can't teach gym. And the gym teacher, rather than being offended, he laughs and he says, "Oh, good one." And then Zach, a kid in his class, comes up to him out of the blue, and he compliments him on that day's lesson. He says, I just want to say it was a really cool lesson. And as soon as he says that, the song starts up, the Ramones' Bonzo Goes to Bitburg from Animal Boy, or it showed up on Animal Boy. It was already a 12-inch. It was my first perspective review for the Nerve. Sent it in to them, and It was called Bonzo Goes to Bitburg. It was renamed My Brain is Hanging Upside Down on Animal Boy. I don't think they changed the song at all. They
No,
just, Reagan was still president, and for whatever reason, they bowed to outside pressure, Seymour
Maybe
Stein.
Johnny Ramone, because I think
Johnny Ramone could have
he was
been
against
behind
recording
that.
it, I think, initially. So
Yeah,
maybe as a
yeah, I think,
compromise. Or
yeah.
who knows? The label, maybe. Who knows?
Could have been the label, whatever. They changed the title. That starts up, and Dewey has this great look on his face because it's like a combination. He's really surprised and he's humbled by what Zach says. Like, okay, wow, that's the moment where he's gotten through to the kids. The song starts up, and now, Scott, I promise I'm not going to do what I did with the thing in the office last week. I will
Play by
not go
play.
through it shot by shot,
Every second.
but I know I did that. It was
That's
kind of
okay.
fun, but it was fun. I did single out my highlights. It's got the next 3 minutes, just incredible. Bonzo Goes to Bitburg, which is such an amazing song, very against the grain of what the Ramones normally did because it is very political. You know, they did lots of jokey political songs in their career, but
Yeah.
and they did get a little more political on Too Tough to Die, I guess, an album I don't never really cared for. But I think this is their greatest, maybe not only great political song, but definitely their greatest. So from Dewey, we cut to that great Pete Frame like thing that he scrawled on the blackboard.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're right in the middle of it. The camera pulls back. See, now I'm getting the word back confused with black, which is confused with white, which is confused with Sarah Silverman. And Pete Frame, if you don't know, he's this rock critic who put out books on rock family trees, right?
Yep.
Is that what it's called? Just rock
Yeah, I
family
think it's
trees?
called, yeah, I think it's Rock Family Trees. I never owned those. I always wanted one, by the way.
Oh, and I'll bet you they cost a fortune now,
Yeah, I should
probably
look for one,
online.
a used one, actually. I've always
And he
wanted.
would take a band like Buffalo Springfield and he would branch it
Yeah.
off in 50
Yeah.
million directions. And they're really interesting. And you just realized how incestuous the entire universe of rock bands was.
Yeah.
So Dewey does this, and it's based on genres, decades, and bands. And he's got them branching out. Like he'll have punk rock, 60s, 70s, 80s, and prog rock and heavy metal. And the camera pulls back, and it's fun if you want to freeze the frame just to copy down
Yeah.
all the. I didn't do that this year. I think I might have done some of it for the entry, copy down all the bands that are up there. And I think I do remember checking it, and is pretty knowledgeable. You know,
Hmm.
it wasn't like he doesn't have, whatever. He doesn't have Jethro Tull and punk or anything like that.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
got
No,
everybody
it's legit
in
for
the right
sure.
place. So, and it's it's Mike White who wrote the script. I don't know if he co-wrote the script with Linklater, but they really know their stuff.
Yeah.
So you cut to that, and then highlights from the rest of the sequence. You've got Jack Black with Freddie the drummer twirling the drumsticks. That's great. One of my two favorite, I think, with three favorite shots in that whole sequence. My very favorite is those three girls.
Hmm.
Tamika, I don't know the other two girls' names. One of them Tamika, he calls Turkey Sub. The other girl he calls Brace Face, and the other girl, he's got a nickname for her. She's the one that does Tomorrow from
Right. Right.
Annie. They're doing like a 60s type girl group thing, and it's just timed perfectly to
Yeah.
Bonzo Goes to Bitburg's chorus. That breaks into Bonzo, and they're doing this thing. It's
Yeah.
just like it can't describe how well that is cut.
Yeah.
It's got this great shot of Dewey staring down Katie, the bass player, trying to get
Yeah.
her to scowl,
Yeah.
you know? Zach, and here's again my second favorite image from it. Zach, he's watching Jack Black in front of the TV set with guitarists behind Jack Black on a TV screen. We see Townsend, Hendrix, and Angus Young. And he is just transfixed. The way he's looking, he's transfixed by this. Like he's just very serious watching. Jack Black's very animated, talking about what's on the screen behind him, but he's just staring and just in a trance, basically.
Yeah.
Summer, we see her reading this book called The Business of Music.
Yeah.
That's just sort of an amusing shot. Dewey modeling for Lawrence, the keyboard
Yeah.
player.
No, not he's not the
Get,
keyboard player. He's
I think he is.
no the like you mean the guy who's designing the clothes? The kid who's
No,
designing
no,
the clothes?
no. Lawrence, the guy who's designing the clothes, is Billy. Lawrence is the keyboard
Oh,
player.
but what did you maybe I misheard what you said. He's doing what with Lawrence?
He's mod. No, when I say modeling, I mean modeling how to play the
Right,
keyboards.
right, right,
Sorry.
right. Okay, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
modeling. You're
Yeah, yeah.
thinking of,
Oh yeah, that's funny. You
Jack
guys are
Black
saying
was
the same
actually
guy.
modeling uniforms. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, what he's doing, he's showing Lawrence how to do
Yeah,
the face
yeah.
shooting, and it's great because Lawrence is the actor who's playing Lawrence clearly is highly amused by Jay. He's trying to suppress his laughter, or not trying to suppress it. He's just genuinely enjoying Jack Black's antics. Um, and then it ends with not quite, but it basically ends with another favorite part, and it's like a matching shot for Zach watching guitar players. It's the drummer montage being watched by Freddie, who's just when we see him finally, he's alone in the classroom. Everyone else, there's nobody else. He's just sitting there in the classroom, and you see three drummers. Now, I thought the drummer was Max Roach. So I looked it up. It's this supposedly famous drum battle between Buddy Rich and Ed Shaughnessy.
Hmm.
So I did identify Buddy Rich. I thought the
Yeah.
Ed Shaughnessy was probably Max Roach, who's like
I
really
thought it was
famous.
one of the Motown drummers, but okay.
Or, I hadn't even thought about that.
But
I
yeah, I
just
don't even
assumed a
know who Ed
jazz
Shaughnessy
drummer.
is. I don't even know who that is.
I thought Ed Shaughnessy was on the Tonight Show, so I'm wondering if that's
Okay.
misidentified. Because the drummer in the clip is black, and I remember
Yeah.
Ed Shaughnessy.
Yeah.
The Tonight Show is white. Anyway, again, Freddie's watching. He's just transfixed by this. Serious, you know. I just love it. And then finally we cut back to the girls and it ends. So this scene, I think the whole scene is really about those two boys watching and trying to process what they're seeing.
Hmm.
That's the best way I can put it. They're trying, and that's what I use. That's why I used to love playing music clips for kids, and I would watch them. And I placed outlandish stuff, like Hendrix at Woodstock and just really weird stuff. And I would watch them and watch them trying to process it, trying to make sense of it because it's so outside their experience. And it's just like these two kids. And that's why I think the main reason I'm trying to figure out when the music, of course, I can't imagine that with another song. Sure, there are other songs you could use, but it was such an inspired choice. And I don't know how he came about it.
Yeah.
This is basically 2003. This
18,
is
18 years.
18 years after a song that's pretty largely forgotten.
Yeah.
Like it's not really
Yeah.
mentioned when the Ramones come up
Yeah.
because it was sort of a stray song. It doesn't even, most people, when they think of the Ramones, they either ended at, most people end it after those first three albums. Some people might push it outward to end of the century. Some people might even push it outward to Too Tough to Die. And that's
Yeah.
it, really.
Yeah.
Nobody really goes beyond that. I should have looked up. I don't know how Bonzo did in Pass and Job that year. Probably did okay.
I can't remember actually. Yeah, good question.
But it was an inspired choice. And
Yeah.
I'm just so moved by I can certainly, it's one of those videos. If I'm feeling down, I can go to YouTube, watch it, and kind of pick myself up.
Yeah.
Other music in it, there is lots of other music, maybe not as much as I might expect. The prominent songs are "Sunshine of Your Love," "Substitute" turns up
Yeah.
prominently. Actually, I could go to Tune Find here.
Stay Free by the Clash is good.
Yeah, "Stay Free." "Stay Free" is used when here they go to little. Dewey is on the phone selling his guitar, and that's when he gets the call. The substitute,
Yeah.
"Stay Free."
Yeah.
Um, You've got sorry, let me go right to the beginning here, Scott. White Room plays, not White Room, Sunshine You Love plays when Dewey finds out the kids
You're frozen, Phil. I can't. You froze on me.
was me, Scott. I think I went offline.
That's okay. Yeah, I wrote a note to you saying you're completely frozen.
Yeah. Okay. So
That's okay.
where we have to back it up to? Do you know what point I froze?
Sorry, what was that, Phil?
You know how far we have to back up in the conversation?
You were starting to look through
Okay.
the songs. I think you mentioned
Okay.
"Sunshine of Your Love," and I think I lost it around there, maybe.
Okay. So we're picking up from a minor glitch here. Substitute happens when Dewey's on his way to school. It's when he's going to tell Summer that she's the manager of the
Right.
band. Um, which of course is funny in the film because it's he makes her manager after she goes home and looks up what a group he is.
Yeah.
Immigrant Song is one of the highlights. That's after they've gotten accepted into the show and they're
Yeah.
back in the band and Immigrant Song is playing and he's just going wild in the front seat. I mentioned in the entry he really should have. I don't know if he was going to win Best Actor. He should have been nominated for Best Actor that year. I'm convinced of that. Like, go back and look at the people that were. I don't know. It's got the usual mix. Bill Murray was up that year. That was fine. I think for Lost in Translation. Um, but at least two of them are performances nobody remembers. That's
Yeah.
the way it is with the Academy Awards and the acting. Every year there's two or three performances that are there for reasons that have nothing to do with the performance.
Yeah.
Jack Black absolutely should have been up for an Academy Award. Other songs, Edge of 17 is a highlight. That's when
Yeah.
he goes out with Joan Cusack,
Yeah.
who's the principal of the school. He's done a little research. He's found out that she's very straight laced, but the one time she loosened up was when she got drunk to a Stevie Nicks song at a school party, I
Yeah.
think. He uses that information to get her to agree on the field trip. So he goes to the jukebox, puts on Edge of 17, like he doesn't know this about her. He
Yeah.
comes back,
Yeah.
he's
Exactly.
doing this. And she goes, "Oh, I love Stevie Nicks." That's one of the highlights. Um, what else is there? There's TVI turns up at one point. Moon Age Daydream turns up.
Yeah.
Highway to Hell, of course. Smoke on the Water when he teaches Zach to play the electric guitar, which is
Chord,
perfect.
yeah.
And that's about it.
I think
Oh,
those are
and
the
then
names. Yeah.
at the end they've got it's
Yeah. It's a
his
long way to the top.
but it's the AC/DC song, right?
Yeah. It's a
And that
long way to the
prologue
top. Yeah.
too. I do have to talk about the final concert, which I just love. I just love it. Like it's right there with the Bonzo scene. Is my favorite in the film. I just find it so moving, because don't forget the parents. The last thing that happened was him on Parents' Night, where and then it's preceded by my favorite line in the film, Joan Cusack in front of all the parents saying, and she's just given up at this point.
It's just
I've just been informed all your children are missing.
yeah.
She's got a big grin on her face as
It
she
is
says.
hilarious.
So there's the whole mechanics of getting them into the place, but then they start and they are great. And then the part where Tamika jumps out and takes a microphone, it's so moving. And that's where her parents are just beaming.
That's the part I didn't rewatch actually, so I should
Oh,
rewatch it for
you just
sure.
you just go on YouTube and watch the
Yeah, well,
clips.
I've got the YouTube rental for another day, so
Oh, okay. Because I agree. The whole scene where they audition, it's kind of, it's really there for the purpose of that joke. That all the
right.
kids dance and die. That might drag a bit, but I think the concert is just brilliant, start to
Yeah, I'll
finish.
rewatch that.
That's the other highlight of it. And I was thinking tonight that the way they do the show, it's kind of an inversion of Saturday Night Fever's ending. Saturday Night Fever at the contest, John Travolta and his partner are not the best. The best couple is that the Latin couple, right?
Right.
Uh, and John Travolta knows that, and yet he wins because he's a big guy at this disco. It's the opposite in School of Rock, where everybody in the place knows that they're the best band, but the other band wins. That sort of
Right.
conventional rock band because whatever they fit the stereotype and they're a known quantity. So they kind of does an inversion of that.
Maybe
I don't know
kind
if
of
there's
a lesson to the kids, maybe too. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, I think that's there. Yeah, because
Like
that, it's
it's
got
more real life in some ways, right?
you're
So
right. It's and Dewey talks about it. He says, "Here's your lesson for today: give up because the man's
yeah,
going to
yeah,
get you."
that's great.
So it does fit in with that. I hadn't thought about that. And then that becomes a running joke about sticking it to the man.
Yeah, yeah.
One of the kids says it under his breath in front of the principal. I did want to say the one postscript to all of this is really sad that the one I meant to check it. I ran out of time. I think it's either the drummer or the guitar player who died 2 or 3 years ago. The actor.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I could look it up quickly. I believe it was the drummer, Freddie.
And are
Um,
those kids actually actors? Because I thought I'd read something that they were actually like music students in some school or something. And maybe, I mean, maybe they were a bit of both, but I've heard that
I
they were
wouldn't.
actually like legitimate music students in some, I don't know, if some conservatory or something. That's what I thought I'd read something along those lines, but
Well, you know what? I've got the Wikipedia entry up right now,
like
and
I
for
think
that,
Summer is I think she might have even had a bit of a career, maybe. I'm not sure. Like her name sounds familiar. Her
yeah, they went on to do some acting. You know that you might be right. Yeah, I can't really
because
look
the
at.
kids, I find one thing I like about the kids, I don't find in general they act too much. Like a lot of kids in movies, the one who probably has the corniest lines is the drummer, and so you can sort of see a little bit of that in him, maybe. But the other
Yeah,
ones are
he's
so natural almost, right? Most of
yeah. The drummer's the one who tries to be sort of a punk, right?
yeah, yeah.
A little bit, yeah. So I just want to check right now. I'm very curious. Okay, so I'll check the drummer. If he isn't the one that died, it would be the guitar player. So the
You might
drummer's
have
name
told
is
me about that a long time ago. Yeah.
Kevin Alexander Clark. He's the one that died,
Hmm.
2021. The kid that plays Freddie.
Wow.
Um, I've seen pieces. They've done this at least once, where they do a 10-year reunion. Someone writes a magazine piece on them, all the kids and
Oh, okay.
entire cast, especially the kids in School of Rock. So it's really become, I think, a beloved film. Um, I was thinking that there is stuff in the film that does sort of, I think, push the envelope of what you could get. I don't know. Sometimes I say this and then I think, nah, people would still do the same. But the three things that here, of course, I lost my link here. I think I do from memory. The three things that I'm not totally sure you could get away with today would be his nicknames for the kids, where Tamika, the overweight girl, he calls her turkey sub. The
Right.
girl with brace, he calls brace face. And then he's got, kind of edgy nicknames for some of the other kids. I think the just completely over the top caricature of Billy, the kid who likes Liza Minnelli and ends up being the costume designer. His caricature is just over the top, effeminate, gay. I don't know if you could get away with that now. And the joke that he makes on parents, not the joke that he
Right.
makes on parents tonight, the inadvertent line he says, where,
Right.
look, the last thing I want to say is, I know your kids have touched me, and I know I've touched them,
Yeah,
and the parents are just horrified,
yeah.
and he doesn't know what he's saying. And I
Well, I
told
think
you,
I think that would make it in the movie because
I think so. I
that's
think
the
so
point,
because
right? Like the point is
you're
like
right. It's
he's
dead in
outraging
all
the parents.
innocence.
I think I only agree with you maybe on the first one, but
So you think the character they'd get away with that now?
I don't know. I think maybe they'd even yeah, I don't know. I don't see that. I mean, I guess you could say it's a
Yeah,
caricature.
it's
I
hard
think
to
the
say.
fact that they included a gay
You're
young
right. That's another way to look at it.
bit of
I
that.
questioned on the message board, I questioned a character in American Fiction, which I don't think you've seen yet.
I did see it
Where,
actually. Yeah, I
okay,
watched
so I questioned the character who was one of the two people. It was the
guy's
woman
brother.
publisher, and it was the publisher, and it was the guy beside her who was brought on at one point. They would be Zoom calling with
Right, right.
Jeffrey Wright, and the one that was just flamboyantly gay. And I said, how does someone who's gay feel about that? And it was pointed out to me that the actor's gay, and that that's the way he is. Whatever, and it's
Yeah,
like
yeah,
as
I
you were
sort of see
saying,
it
it's
that
giving
way.
prominence to a gay character. So you could be right on that. I sometimes I think I want to pretend that you know 10 years ago you could do this and can't do it anymore. So I'm always saying that. I think a lot of times it's not true. Um, So that's about it, Scott, for School of Rock. Like I say, try to watch it once a year. It's my favorite Richard Linklater film. It's one of my favorite films ever now. Dazed and Confused is close. Yeah, but I just think it is such a beautiful film that I
Yeah,
completely missed its greatness the first time. And as I wrote at length in the blog entry, it's also very much a film about teaching
yeah,
and how to teach. And it made me think about my own teaching. And I ended up uh, finishing that entry, comparing things that Dewey does to things that I would do. And sometimes I thought, yeah, I do a good job on that. And other things that say, no, I don't do a good job on that. Because he is, in his own way, he is kind of like a model teacher.
yeah. You had mentioned High Fidelity for, as part of Jack Black's career. I rewatched that movie. I saw it when it came out and I hadn't seen it since, and I rewatched it maybe 5 or 6 months ago. I liked most of it, not all of it. There were things I liked and didn't like, but I think I actually the most enjoyable element of for me was probably Jack Black. But I became convinced after seeing that, and obviously I could be wrong, but my sense is that Richard Linklater saw Jack Black in that movie and said I could make a whole movie around this character because he's kind of the exact same character. Except he's not a musician; he's a record store guy. But it's almost like it's the blueprint. And I just have this feeling Richard Linklater maybe thought there's a movie around this guy. Like he's really funny. There's a vibrancy to it. It's on the edge of being like cliche and hard to watch, but he just touches that line and it's pitch perfect in many ways. And he's like that in High Fidelity as well.
I don't doubt that at all. That he watched it and said, I've got to make a film with this guy. Reading up on it, the film is actually based on screenwriter Mike White's concept for the film was inspired by the Langley School's music project, whatever
Right,
that
right.
is. So, but I'm not saying I'm saying that doesn't rule out at all what you're saying, that
Well, it
I could
could be
see
a merging of the two,
a
maybe.
merging of the
So,
two, where
and
he's
I
looking
obviously I
around.
could be wrong, but that's definitely I
No,
just thought,
but
wow. Like I was just struck by because I kind of forgot about Jack Black's character in High Fidelity.
high
I just been
fidelity,
thinking
yeah.
about John Cusack and stuff like that. So
I've never
I
gone
was
back and
surprised in High Fidelity how little music in the movie meant anything to me. I liked the movie for a whole lot of reasons, but music almost had like, you know, almost next to no part in that. So
I know, and the one scene that I still remember musically, and it just did nothing for me, was where he says, the scene where John Cusack says, I'm now about to sell 20 copies of the Beta Band's first
right.
EP. And he plays that song, which is, I found out that it is, I think, the Beta Band's most famous song. The song did nothing for me. I ended up
Yeah.
loving a different song by them, but no, nothing sticks out musically for me, but I've never gone back to watch it again. But I think what you're saying is it probably is a mix of those two, that he might have seen that, said, wow, I could really do something with that guy. And then this Mike White, who's probably a friend of his, comes to him with this idea and he says, that's where I got to use him.
Yeah.
Reading up on it, this will make you laugh. You know that how the film begins, he does that stage dive that just ends up being a disaster.
Yeah.
You know who that's based on?
I know.
Jack Black once witnessed a stage dive gone wrong involving Ian Astbury of the band. I can't believe that. Um, and the other thing is that I was complaining about him not getting an Academy Award nomination, but he was nominated for a Golden Globe.
Oh, okay.
Best actor in a comedy or musical. He lost out to Bill Murray, which is, I guess, to me, Bill Murray and Lost in Translation, I'd probably put that in the drama category more naturally than I would in the comedy category. I
Yeah.
mean, got a dry sense of humor for sure, but it's also a pretty serious role.
Yeah.
And he won an MTV award, which is no surprise. The
Yeah.
film itself at 2004 won the Best Comedy Film at the British Comedy Awards. And when it made its sort of first run finish, it had grossed $130 million worldwide, four times its budget of 35 million. And at the time, it was the highest grossing music themed comedy of all time, until that got it got overtaken in 2015 by Pitch Perfect 2.
Oh
So
wow.
it really was a box office success.
Yeah. Um,
Okay, Scott.
can I just mention a couple other things?
Yeah, sure. Sorry.
We've talked a bit about Mike White. It's funny. I found one of the. It's not explored a lot, and it's definitely in the category of being like a. I'd call it a sub theme almost. I actually find it quite interesting in the movie. There's this kind of little hidden theme of what would you call it? Like lost dreams or something, or you know what
Very
I mean?
much
And
so.
it actually, and it has one of the funniest lines, and the movie is, by the way, just full of endlessly funny lines. But one of
Oh
the
yeah.
funniest to me is it's kind of subtle. It's in the scene with where Jack Black, let's call him Dewey, is trying to
Yeah.
convince Ned early in the film, why did you give up the rock and all this? And Jack, actually I wrote it down. Mike White says, maybe it's time to give up those dreams. I did, and things are going really great for me. And Sarah Silverman gives him this look almost like, yeah, you're learning, or something. Like that's very good. Like it's very subtle, but it's just something about the way he said, I gave up my dreams and things are going really great. But then later in the film, there's kind of a reprise of that scene because he actually says in a kind of more, it's almost a wistful tone. Mike White says to Jack Black, and it's after, he's discovered that he's, been playing him and all that stuff, and they called the cops in, and he just said, sometimes you just gotta let these dreams die. Maybe we just weren't that good. And I actually kind of find it moving in a weird way. It's like how many people of our, you know, genre or demographic have probably, felt that at many times in our life. Like, yeah, like do you just keep these ridiculous dreams going? Or like I find that kind of interesting actually. So
No, I think the film's very much about that. And I bet you it applies to some other characters. I mean, you get the feeling that there's a lot more to Joan Cusack. She's
yeah,
not quite the straight arrow that she is. She's
yeah,
sort of settled for that,
yeah.
and she's cast herself into this role and she plays it to the hilt of the stern. One of my favorite bits, now that talk about Joan Cusack, and she's great. We mentioned her
Uh,
before. How much Kale like her. You probably know what I'm going to mention, where we hear her chewing out a student, and the camera. We don't see the student until the camera. And it's like the kid's 7 years old or something. I can't remember what she's saying. Something, you know, you're never going to do this again,
yeah,
are you?
yeah.
I hope you learned your lesson. The girl's crying. It's just, pixie little girl, 7 years old.
And
Um,
one of my favorite lines, and I know you'll like this one for sure, is it's how Jack Dewey or Ned Schneebly he has the two pep talks with is it Kamika or Tamika,
Mika.
the overweight girl, but and in one of I think in both of them he mentions Aretha Franklin, but he's
Yeah.
telling about how like look at Aretha, and he goes like how she'll come on stage and everybody wants to party with Aretha.
I know. I
It's
know.
like Aretha Franklin is this hedonistic, after concert.
I know. That
Everybody
is
wants to.
party with Aretha. I had thought about that. I love that talk he gives to with
Yeah, it's
Tamika.
really good. It's really moving,
You're
actually.
right. There's two of them. There's the first time where she goes up
The
to
first time
him.
I think it's when she's sort of nervous about asking if she can sing or not.
Yes.
And then the second one is
Yep.
before the show or something, and she says that
She
she's
says, "I
too
can't do
nervous
this.
to do
People are
it.
going to laugh at me." Yeah.
Yeah,
And that really more than I said they probably wouldn't allow the turkey sub. That more than makes up for that. Like
yeah,
that is one of the great things about being a large person.
yeah,
And Jack Black, Dewey takes it and throws it back on himself. That's amazing.
yeah.
The thing about Mike White, have you ever seen a weird film? I think it's the first film where he got some attention. He scripted it. I don't know if he directed. I don't think he directed it, but it's called Chuck and Buck.
Oh, I
You ever see?
remember that movie. I haven't seen it
Which
though.
was a joke, I think, because at the time, because Chuck Eddie, Chris Buck,
Mm,
but it's just a weird film about sort of a guy stalking another guy. Very
wow.
strange. It was a year or two before School of Rock,
Yeah.
and he's turned up in other things too. And then, just if you ever get a chance, you're interested, the Wikipedia page is filled with stuff. They talked about doing a sequel to it. Never
Wow.
quite did it. There was a big stage adaptation, I think.
Really?
Uh,
Wow.
I think so.
I
10
will, I
year
will, I will throw in that I think it's the best kids movie of all time.
kids movie, like meaning movie with kids as opposed to for kids, right? Or both?
Well, both actually.
Yeah.
It's one I'm entire like, Avery, 6 years old, watched it, and I had no. I mean, there would be a few jokes he wouldn't get, sort of thing, but and
My
yeah,
class.
kids. I
Yeah.
mean,
My
Jack
class
Black
is
makes it, incredibly enjoyable for kids for
Yeah.
sure.
My
So
classes thoroughly enjoyed it, and I showed it for three, fours, and grade sixes, and sure they got different things out of it, but yeah, I think they loved it.